Good morning. I was told that some people couldn't hear last night's session, which for a number of reasons doesn't actually surprise me, but I've actually turned up the amplifier, so I hope it's a little clearer today. This is one of those times when I really don't quite know where to begin. I am completely overwhelmed and inundated by an avalanche of revelation that is like a cascading waterfall, and I'm trying to catch the drops. And I think I just need to let it have its way and flow and, in a sense, baptize us all in its deluge. Because that's the reason we're here. We're not here to hear someone speak. We're here to have an experience of the freedom that is the truth of our own being as spirit. It's a radical revelation. It's the truth of being, your being and mine. It's the truth of all being universally. And whilst I do know and has been revealed to me the nature, the content, the substance of this morning's, or certainly this first opening session, its content as universal principle, I of myself have no way of knowing how this will work into an infinite way class. But having said that, what is the infinite way? Except by definition, limitless. What if this were your first ever exposure to this infinite way teaching, revelation, or even a Tony Titshall class? Big deal. But you know, there have been times when, and there was a retreat I gave in New Jersey where there was one lady who said, I hadn't read an Infinite Way book, had never heard of Joel Goldsmith, and who is this Tony Titshall anyway? I don't know why I'm here. But do you think she wasn't touched? Whether she was out of, as were many, AA or yoga or some other path leading towards the light in the inevitable spontaneous unfoldment of her own individuality, her freedom as one with truth in the light, how can this revelation not find its way to her? Because by definition it is infinite, it is unlimited, it is not secular. It is a universal principle. And whether you have or have not experienced exposure to its light before, whether you have read any Joel Goldsmith or been to a Tony Titchell or anyone else's class, is neither here nor there, neither omission nor commission, whether you have or haven't, makes any difference whatsoever. Because you are here because I and the Father are one. It's not the truth of someone else. It's the truth of your being. And universal principle will lead you into the light of revelation of the truth of your own being. How secular is the infinite way? Does it belong to someone? Does infinity belong to somebody? Or is it not universal principle? Is that mind that was also in Christ Jesus not totally unconditioned? And it is that we are all invited, told, instructed to let that mind that was also in Christ Jesus be in you. Speaking of which, we have all been given sayings for contemplation. And as I sat in my room, I just thought, well, let's have a look at this and see how this might work in to universal principle. The very opening passage of which is, whosoever drinketh of the water that I shall give him shall never thirst. Is that a man? The I that I am, that speaks of itself, the truth of all being, universal, infinite, omnipresent, freedom in the light. Is that a man? Is that a mortal? Is it a concept? Or is it as the truth of all being, the one life, I, universal being, God, if you want to use the word? But would it matter whether that I as an individual aspect of infinite being were Muslim, Hindu, Taoist, Christian? The only limitation on its totality and its freedom is adding a label to reduce it to a certain group, when in fact it is universal. It doesn't matter what your background, even your human history, take up thy cross. It doesn't matter what it is. and bring it into the light, and you can be assured you will be healed of it along the way. It doesn't matter where it came from, what it was, whether your sins are scarlet, to that universal principle, you are white as snow. It doesn't even say, oh, not you, you're a thief on a cross. Not you, you haven't read an Infinite Way book. God forbid. Universal principle takes note of nothing in the realm of effect. It is a total wiping the slate clean of all concepts of material existence, whether they be this or that, east or west, north or south, Muslim or any other Christian. It sees through the labels that are the limitations and the illusions that we exist in time and space as a mortal, with a certain kind of faith that has the truth. When truth lays the axe at the root of it all and says, I am come that you have life. It doesn't say that you have it in this form or that. Life unconditioned. Universal revelation of the truth of your being and its omnipresence through your oneness with me. But is that me, mortal? Or is it the I that I am? That I that is come that you have life, was it Jesus the man? Or was it not so that they crucified him for likening himself unto God, because they acted according to their limited concepts of what they thought he was saying? And so they saw their own personalization, not his freedom. If we can see with the eyes of God the freedom of omnipresence, the truth of universal being, and its freedom in the light as principle, we ourselves are uninhibited, unhindered, unlimited by the imposition on us of universal belief that we exist as a mortal of this faith or that. Whether we have a good or a bad human history is neither here nor there. We can bring it all into the light, and believe me, the good does no better for us than its opposite. We still have to leave all for my sake. It is as nothing. Any more than the evil would hinder us entering, neither would the good allow. We still have to leave all for that universal principle that constitutes the truth of our being as spirit, man, as we truly are, who we truly are, created in the image and likeness of God. Is this the image and likeness of God, this little mortal thing here who has to shave and clean and keep clean and brush his teeth and do all the things, pay his bills and live a life mortal? No. But the I that I am, the universal principle that constitutes the reality of all life, the I, universal that you are, therein is contained that perfect reflection that is the image and likeness of God, I and the Father being one. So we each bring into the light whatever it is that represents our human history, our mortality, regardless of faith, regardless of condition, regardless of judgment. We still bring ourselves as we seem to be for who we think we are into the light, that we might release it, loose him and let him go. For what is man that thou art so mindful of him? I have to do it every single day. Joel speaks of giving classwork as a horrendous experience because it is total self-annihilation. I can only be and fulfill the purpose of my being when I am willing to leave all for it, to cease from man, mortal, put off the mortal, and not be who material sense would have me believe myself to be, from whom alone I suffer and struggle. None of us suffer from anything or anyone outside ourselves. It's such an easy way to blame someone else for our own condition or shortcoming, when we have to be willing to take upon ourselves the responsibility of accepting and embracing the fullness of ourselves, warts and all, and say, here I am, Father. I have no idea how I got in this state, this dilemma, this condition. But Father, forgive us, for we know not what we do. We were lost, we went the wrong way. There is no judgment, there is only freedom in the light, forgiveness without condemnation. Thy will be done. So it doesn't matter what our condition is. Bring it into the light and be willing to let it go, to loose him and let him go. And be healed of the illusion that we ever existed as a selfhood apart from or other than that one that is omnipresent, universal principle that never did suffer from anything outside or other than itself, but which as the light knows that there never was any form or identity. Call it the darkness if you like. What about if we think it's the light? If we think it's the light, who is doing the thinking? We still have to loose him and let him go and come into the light of knowing that I exist not as a mortal. I was never born. I, the reality, the truth of individual being through our infinite individuality and oneness with God, can never die. I am that I am is the truth of being as universal principle. Do you think someone here is saying, oh, I am that I am, shame about you lot? Oh dear. God forbid, and God does. Because God, as the revelation of the truth of being universally, says, come unto me all ye who labor. God is no respecter of persons. Does God's rain not fall on the just and the unjust? My garden might be full of glorious flowers and next door is full of weeds. Do you think the sun cares? Do you think the sun says, oh, I'm not shining on that garden. Look at the state of that. That is the very one, if the sun were to think anything, would think, oh, that's the one that needs me most. And that lost sheep is the one I am willing to leave all other 99 in the flock and go and return unto the fold of universal being. That's why we're here. Disparate bunch that we might seem to be. Look at us. Well, look at some of us. Not me, of course. Oh, dear. But isn't it wonderful to know that none of us are judged? That there remaineth no condemnation to those who have their being in Christ. And when I began, started this session by saying I really don't quite know where to begin. But when I began last night's session, the first words that came through me were to some effect, who would add to what silence is already revealing? That was the happening. Revelation. Revelation was happening. In the silence of being. Who would add? Who could add anything to the manifestation of revelation when it is happening? God forbid anyone think he could or should or would ever try and waste his time gilding the lily that is already perfection in expression. Revelation made manifest in the silence of individual self-awareness. And at the end of the session, I happened to say, well, I really don't know if any of us have caught the significance of what happened here. But whatever it was that happened in that here now moment, is it not happening here now? It may seem to take on a different form. We may seem to have a different degree of awareness of it. But does it change the eternal fact that the truth of being, forever expressing itself and made manifest in and as the I, that you, we, I am, that we are, changeth not, as Shakespeare said, though changes find? Is it affected by the apparency of duality? The existing flux of material belief? Don't we all fluctuate? It's not even from day to day, it might be moment to moment. We might leave here with a smile like a Cheshire cat and walk outside, and immediately the universal mind is upon us again. But if we can rest in the acknowledgement of the I that we are, knowing its omnipresence and omnipotence, never doubt The work I do is not mine, but his that sent me. Of myself I can do nothing. The Father within, he doeth the work. And so as we sent forth like a lamb amidst the wolves of thought of this universal belief, mesmerism of sense, go forth into our world in stillness, we will find we need do nothing but be the stillness we are, whose very manifest presence denies the existence of anything other than itself. I am is omnipresent, universal principle, the true, infinite way of life and living. It's never secular. It isn't ours. It doesn't belong to a group. It doesn't even exist in time and space. If anyone has the answer to what it is when asked what is the infinite way, please tell me, because then I will know what to say. Other than, well, it's a way of life based on universal spiritual principles. Well, what does that mean? Oh dear. It's taken me 35 years to come to a place where I have no idea what it means. But it is the truth by which we live, or at least endeavour to do our utmost to live by. What can we say or speak of the process of dissolution that is taking place in us all, of all material sense, of all personal sense of identity, of all mortal experience, of all human existence? The dissolution that is the awakening, even whilst yet in the flesh, out of the flesh. Awakening from the dream, even whilst yet in the dream. What can we say? No wonder the natural man comprehendeth not the things of God. And so it's best to say nothing. Although there are, and I've noticed this of late, there are times when for some reason I find myself given to actually say a few more words. I am a little bit more daring. After 35 years, I suppose you really should be able to be, but I'm also still extremely cautious that I speak not of myself, lest I bear witness to a lie, that I exist and I know something that you don't. No. But the I that I am, that is that universal principle of omnipresence as the reality of all life, recognizes when there is a genuine, sincere, earnest opening and a search, an awakening, a seeking in one in whose presence one finds oneself, who may well inquire of us, what do you do? And my answer used to be, I spend my life avoiding answering that question. But you know, the time comes when the Spirit takes us by the scruff of the neck and says, it's time to answer the question. Oh dear. Well, in that case, you'd better answer it. But as is the case in every session that I give, when I come empty as anything, just willing to be used, Spirit says you don't even need to know what you will say, for I will put the words in your mouth. And so sometimes, in a selfless, non-egotistical way, we may just recognize that this is a moment, divine, given by grace, when perhaps we are to give just a little bit more of the truth by which we endeavour to live. About this way that is a revelation of mystical consciousness. Oh, really? What's that? It's just individual experience of the truth of being. Oh, well, is it a church? No. Do you belong to some organization? No. Well, how do people get to hear of your classes? I have no idea. It's like, well, give me something to work on. But you know, Joel at the end of Spiritual Journey said, rather than leave anything as a testament to the infinite way, let alone a monument of Joel Goldsmith or anything regarding the infinite way, I would much rather take everything away. So sometimes, except I go away, and in other words, unless it's not give nothing, but we invite someone to look deeper into that infinite space of their own withinness, to find the nothing upon which he hangeth, the earth, that is the reality and the truth of their own being. And as such, we can be used as instruments of the divine. Mouthpieces for revelation. It's selfless. There's nothing egotistical about it. We all know, God forbid, we would never speak of ourselves, lest any man should glory, but by grace. And so there will be, as you will notice, there will be those times and moments when it will be given you to say, now, just a little more, just to whet the appetite of a world in need. Yes, okay, we can say, well, what world is in need? Well, from the standpoint of universal principle, there is none. But because you are that, you have those, and here we are, right back at we haven't even got past the first quote in this little pamphlet. You have that living water, for which it says the whole earth groaneth and travaileth for the coming of the children of God. Those who drink of those living waters of faith, hope and trust in things unseen. Those who base their lives on faith, hope and trust. Not in the mortal material visible realm, but on and within the eye of their own being, reaching out only to the light for the light. Not even asking another, lest we should be given someone's opinion, someone's doctrinal condition, background and belief. Oh, well, yes, Jesus is the only way. Oh, well, Muhammad is the only prophet. We're not interested in those levels of religion that we have already outgrown by grace, because we have, just like a flower, it is no longer in the bud condition. It has no choice but to open into the light. But as we, as the mortal, have begun to seek and search and find and unfold into the light of our own awakening, so as with the flower, eventually do those visible forms begin to fall away. But I remain always, even unto the end of the world, Jesus said. The world itself can fall away, but I remain always. And that I is the I that is consciousness, universal principle. The all-inclusive, all-containing, all-enfolding, all-embracing, non-judgmental, unconditioned mind. That is the reality of the one mind that was also in Christ Jesus, but which is the reality of that one divine principle, universal, in and as the eye of your being, your life, your mind. He giveth not the spirit of fear, but of a sound mind. So bring that fear. It says the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. It's a fearful place to find ourselves as a mortal when we bring ourselves into the light of dissolution. Believe me, I speak from experience, and I still speak from that experience. I would love to be able to say, well, I have attained. Thank goodness that's behind me. No man can claim to have fully attained. No man. You might think that there are those who have. Believe me, they are good at disguising what it is that they are experiencing as they go through the dissolution of the imposition on them, which is universal, of that belief in a selfhood apart. No man remains untouched by the hypnotism of sense. No man. Doesn't matter who it is. We all still must bring ourselves, warts and all, into the light and be willing to say, Father, thy will be done. Dissolve me, take me, heal me, free me, release me, use me. Take over my life. It's not my life. I don't even have a life. I surrender this illusion that I have a life, and I give unto Caesar that which is Caesar's. Okay, fine, this world. They will have their reward, the good and the evil. But unto God do I bring myself, to be accepted and to be released into the fullness of the freedom that is the light of consciousness. You, the I. Remember, I speak from universal principle, the I in and of us all. That freedom in the light that I, as universal being, am. Do you know there is none holier than thou? None. None. Are you the Son of God? They taunted Jesus. My Father and your Father. He was simply revealing the truth of individual being and its universality, its infinity, its freedom. But because of the limited state of vision and comprehension, they crucified him. That is why we must, as Joel says, keep our finger on our lips and say very little. To very few. But at least be willing. That if you know one is in need, one is parched in the world of need, and is reaching out to the light for the light. When you know you are that, you are the light, be willing to share something. It might just be the action of non-action that is the greatest of all action, which can just be a smile, a moment of knowing. A genuine dissolution of all judgment without fear in the acceptance of that universal principle that constitutes the nature and the reality of true identity in and of us all. For we are one. It doesn't look that way. But where does that oneness end? Here? Or at least, that's a relief. No. We are one is part of that universal principle made manifest on earth, as it is in heaven. With all mankind, if I be raised up within my awareness of the truth of my own self as omnipresence, I draw all men unto me. I realize my oneness with all men. What then can I do? But, as it also says in here, somewhere, well, that I say unto you, that you love one another. You see, universal. Does it say, you infinite way students? Or you Christians? I, universal being, say unto you, that you love one another universally. Even as I, universal principle, love you. Is there any judgment in that? Are we withheld from the light through condemnation? The thief on the cross, well, I'm not so sure I'm taking you into my Father's house this very night. It doesn't even take that long for the I that we are, that never was outside or other than, and forever in and one with that light, to be taken into my Father's house this very now moment. It may be, as Joel says, all healing is instantaneous, but it could take 5 or 10 years to come through. It may be that the reason that was put in that way is because Jesus knew it would take this individual a period of time to forgive himself. He was not withheld from entry into the light. He was not judged from any human standpoint. He was not condemned by the Christ. But the extremity of his human condition, and sometimes we can be in that place. Each of us can be on our own cross, whatever it might seem to be of circumstance. And yet we, as a result of that extremity, find ourselves through that process of dissolution that is taking place as a result of that condition beside the Christ of our own being. We on the cross are reaching out to the light. And what is that prostration but the willingness to open our heart fully to the light? That we, through the non-judgment of the Christ of our own being, might be welcomed into our Father's house this very now. When the second quote here is, I have meat to eat, you know not of. That was said by universal principle to material sense. It wasn't said from one man to another, oh, I've got meat, you haven't. What a denial of the truth, the revelation of the truth of, call it the Christian principle if you like, but of universal principle that would be, I have and you don't. But it may just be that, presented as we all can be by some degree of material sense, we are not yet in the fullness of the awareness of it. But we can all assert that dominion that is ours by grace over what seems to be a reality, a condition, identity, a power, material sense, when in reality it is nothing but an illusion, hypnotism. We can all assert the dominion of the truth of our own being, even whilst yet in it, over it, by saying, I have meat. The tempter came to Jesus. Why do you think it won't come to you? The thought processes of negative emotion. Limited condition. It presents to us all. And it came as a temptation to him. All you have to do, if you will just believe and worship me, the tempter says, the temptation to accept and believe in a selfhood apart that presents itself to us all says, I will give you all that you see. Well, that's what we've got, isn't it? We have got all that we see. And all we now have to do is give it back to the nothingness from whence it came, that is its source, that is its condition, even now, whilst yet in the flesh. We are not of the flesh. It is not a power. You are not immortal. You were not created in time and space where evil can happen, Joel tells us in the wisdoms. You are that universal principle. You are divine being, not human. You are eternal in the heavens, not made with hands. Ye are the light. It's all been said. How thick-skinned are we before we accept the revelation of the truth of our own being as forever one with that which we set out to seek? And yet the process of dissolution along the way, the journey of letting go, arriving at the one we know we are, the one we've always been, the one I am, the never seen, the light. That process of dissolution is taking place in us all. And it's breaking down whatever it is that stands between us and the end of the search. That already is, because the end is from the beginning, from since before Abraham was, I am. Universal being, eternal in the now, was. Before this world, as a condition, not a reality, ever came into being, before we ever accepted the belief and the illusion of duality, mortality, the reality of appearances as identity, condition, geographical time and space. This world. Before this world. And it can happen in this now moment. Before you accept and believe this world as or is a reality, I am. Right there, before you call, I will answer, and I am come. Universal principle, not person, because what will happen? Oh dear, 2,000 years ago they were okay because he was and went. Are we going to be among those secular who believe that? Or it's opposite. Well, we're waiting for the Messiah to come again. The Messiah that says, I am come. The Messiah of your own being. The reality and the truth that you are, that is forever come as you and as me. Infinite individuality. Universal being, unconditioned mind. That I that is forever come in the now moment. It knows no truth, reality, fact to time and space. The light renders null and void, and the light was in the world, but the world was null and void. In the beginning was the Word. And the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Is God in this eternal now moment, in which truth forever is as true now as it was whenever, because there is only the revelation of this eternal truth in the eternal now moment. Whatever was of truth then is truth now and shall forever be so, because you are eternal being. Someone once said to me, oh, don't quote things to me that someone said 2,000 years ago. And I thought, really? They're not true now? They aren't the revelation of the truth of your being now? Ye are the light isn't true now. You have meat to eat the world knows not of now isn't the truth of your being. When you know this truth that makes you free, that reveals your freedom in the light even whilst yet in the flesh, in the world and not of the world, a light unto the world, for I will make you fishers of men. That universal principle of revelation says. Because it is the truth of being universally. Come forever in you as the life, that you might have the life. Do you not have the life? Are you or aren't you? Maybe the shortest poem I ever wrote was I don't know how I came to now. I can only say I have found the way to love you. Is that a man? Or is that not the Christ in and of us all, saying, I am come to love you beyond measure, without judgment? Only come unto me, all ye who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. How long, aren't we clever, resisting that invitation? But it's never personal. We cannot slough off fast enough the slings and arrows of material sense, because it's a universal belief. St. Paul said, I would not sin, but I still find a sense of sin in me. I would not entertain a sense of a selfhood apart from, but I still find a sense of it in me. But Joel accounts for it by saying, when people say, well, where did it come from? He said, there's no accounting where nothing came from. We just have to give it no power, no credence, no time, no space, no effect, no presence in our lives. For I am the way, the truth, and the life. Is the revelation of, yes, the Christian principle, but the revelation of the Christian principle is the manifestation of universal principle. It's as simple, as total, and as radical to the human mind as that. But we no longer try to comprehend or understand through using the human mind, the conditioned mind that is full of conditions of good and evil, sickness, health. It is the manifestation of the belief in two powers, the opposites. In it is contained the belief in birth and death. And yet Joel tells us in Realization of Oneness in the chapter No And, there is no and. And if it is linked together with that little word, birth and death, good and evil, sickness and health, the opposites of this world, it is not a reality. It's not easy to accept, to comprehend. No wonder it says, lean not unto thine own understanding. It's mind-boggling. The revelation of the truth of our being and our oneness with God. We can't claim it. That which you claim you lose. It is that which you are willing to release that you find in heaven. But where is that heaven but within your conscious awareness of the freedom that is the truth of your being through your oneness with God? It's mind-boggling. How amazing is the truth of your being. Infinite individual being through our oneness with God. as if to exemplify the universal nature, the impersonal nature of this revelation. The next quote is, I can of my own self do nothing. Nothing. The most I can do is surrender myself, that he whose right it is might become in me, this day on earth, as it is in heaven, Prince of Peace. That one, that is the I in and of us all, the I that you are, come that you have life, that might, and is indeed even now speaking of the truth of your being through the revelation of the truth of itself. Come that you might have the awareness of your freedom in the light as life, truth, and love. I am come, not to do my own will, but the will of him that sent me. If there is anything personal in that, it is total willingness to give up the ghost, to cease from man, to lean not unto mine own understanding, to acknowledge I have meat, yes, that material sense knows not of, but it is not of myself, lest any man should glory, but by grace. That he whose right it is might become. The will, the work I do is not mine, but his that sent me. What do I need do but be the I that I am, in which is contained already the Alpha and the Omega? Is all doing not contained within the infinity of being? That was one of the problems I always used to have with the immigration. What do you do, Mr. Titshall? You can't say I am. That's what I do. I am, sir, Mr. Immigration Man. Oh my goodness. So we have to give unto Caesar, which I tried initially by saying, well, I'm self-employed. Yes, Mr. Titchell, you're self-employed, but what do you do? Oh dear, what do I do? I am. Is that any good? I just be, officer. Oh dear. You see, you can't say these words. You can't speak the tongues of men when you're trying to convey the truth of being. You just can't account for yourself. So you give unto Caesar. And what came to me was, and it's equally as untrue as anything I might have said about the truth, I teach meditation. I don't teach anything. I sing to the choir. That's what I do. As they say in England, I bring coals to Newcastle, and our American friends here won't have the first idea what that means, but too bad. Newcastle is the coal mining city, or used to be, of England. And there's another saying which, oh dear, probably half of you won't understand. You can't teach your grandmother how to suck eggs. Because that's all she knows how to do, you know. Anyway, I think that's the meaning of that. Without her teeth. She has to suck them. Oh, anyway, no. This is going from the sublime to the ridiculous. I always know when I start getting hysterical that I have to just pull in the reins a bit and contain myself. Oh dear. Drunk on spirit. Drunk on life, the wine of spirit flows within my veins. The horse and cart have parted now that I've let go the reins. I no longer even need try to live my life. I just surrender. I just endeavor to simply be in the eternal now. It's not easy for any of us to go with the flow, to float on this ocean of spirit, of selflessness, timelessness. It's the dissolution, it's the willingness not to be who we never were, the imposition of which will forever try to persuade us that we are that which is a self apart from or other than the I that we actually are. So we can't speak of the truth. in true form. And so we give unto Caesar, and we find a way that is acceptable in thy sight, even according to the needs of the natural man. So we will say something normal, lest we should be judged and condemned, crucified for likening himself unto God, saying something that the natural man cannot comprehend and cannot accommodate. So to some degree, as Lorraine Sinclair once said to me, the infinite way is a spiritual underground. It's lived in the world, but is not of the world. There is nothing we can say about it except that it is a way of life lived by universal principle, non-judgment. Not even the need for forgiveness. What enemies do I, universal principle, have to forgive? Unless I accept a concept of mortality, material sense, of a certain condition, oppositional to my own particular frame of reference, and then judge him as if I were greater than he, or more right. That God is on our side, that's a relief. Isn't he praying the same prayer? How ironic that the prayer of the opposites is the same. How able are we, therefore, to release the belief in the existence as a reality or an identity of a condition that seems to oppose the opposites of this world, duality, the hypnotism of this world, so that we might be in it, but not of it. And was that not the prayer of Christ in Jesus? Father, I pray not that you take them from the world, but that you leave them in the world and not of the world. It's the hardest place. Why are you with them, with all of those, this world, prostitutes and beggars and thieves? They said to Jesus, as if to try to find fault with where he had no choice but to be. The healthy have no need of a physician. Why are you in the world, except it be for the light that you are? And so, with all thy getting, get understanding. Understanding that in truth, universal principle is the reality of all being. It's not ours, and not his. There is no differential in the unconditioned mind. There is no division within omnipresent being. There is no separation when we are forever one with that consciousness I am that knows beside me there is none other. Who then would I even need to heal, and of what? Except I heal myself of the acceptance of a selfhood apart from God, who can be or is suffering from, and that's the evidence of sense brought to our attention, through which we as the light allow the light to shine and dissolve. For the nothingness it is, we're not changing a condition, we are dissolving an illusion, presenting itself to us within us. The effects, inevitable as they are, within us then, because there is only one, and we know that one, omnipresent being, goes out to the far corners of the earth and touches, in particular, those who are reaching out, looking to us for light, but which, as a universal principle, will be there in due season, for unto every season there is a time, and to every time there is a purpose. So each one, he may seem to be facing the other way and doesn't catch the ball. But in due season every knee must bend, for all shall be returned unto the light. Returned. As each one turns to, in need of, and seeking ultimately, the light of truth that will reveal this universal principle, regardless of doctrine, of religion, of faith, of judgment, of conditioned mind. Universal principle takes no note of any of it. In one fell swoop, Omnipresence precludes the existence of any other presence. Omniscience is a light unto the ignorance of belief, which is never personal. It's just part of the hypnotism of the carnal mind. And when we look carefully at the nature of individual being and the nature of error as principles revealed in this infinite way of life, we can, and quite rightly and justly, might ask, who is hypnotized? Is hypnotism and the one who seems to be hypnotized not one and the same? Is God hypnotized? Have we not read all evil is impersonal? It's no one's. It's not you, and it's not yours. And Joel says it was here when we arrived. It will still be here when we move on. That is the nature of material sense. But we, as an aspirant of the truth of universal being, even whilst yet in the flesh, are not of the flesh. And we can be in the world, even whilst yet not of the world, as the light, which is our protection from. Nothing shall enter to defile or make a lie of this truth, when that light that is the truth of our being is our protection from the approach of the darkness of material sense of thought. We've all been assailed by thought, but that's all it is. It isn't you. It's not the truth of your being. The truth of your being that is your protection will maintain you in a state of protection through non-resistance. Put up thy sword into its place. For those who take up the sword die by the sword. Why would we, unless we accepted or believed that it were something that needed to have the sword lain at the root of? It's a nothingness. And so transcendent unfoldment of awakening will reveal to us we need to do absolutely nothing to what seems to be everything. Namely this world, because it's just hypnotism, which is nothingness. It's not something. It is nothing. And as the I that you are, that is the allness of that one life, the only presence, makes itself evident within individual awareness, your awareness and mine, that is come that you have life more abundant, freedom in the light, as we each individually aspire to and attain some greater depth and degree of awareness of our oneness with that, so shall it be unto us. We seem to be states and stages of consciousness unfolding, and of course Joel accounts for the way our experience is at this time in that way. But ultimately, on arriving, we find that we never were anything outside or other than the I am that we know and find ourselves to be. You see, what happened last night, a number of people said the same thing. For them, last night's session was the descent of the Christ. We were ordained by a divine presence in the depths of stillness that is unaccountable to material sense. There's nothing we can say. It happened. It took place. It was the happening. But the next quote is, it is the Spirit. You see that, depth of that, consciousness that quickeneth. Even your mortal form. It will dissolve the illusion that you have a physical frame or form or function, activity, identity, and reveal in its place the omnipresence of Spirit. Consciousness is what I am. For it is the Spirit that quickeneth. The flesh profiteth nothing. So why are we all so persuaded, convinced, hypnotized, pursuing the things of the flesh? That's not how it is, I know that. But that is the nature of the human condition that can present itself and may assail one here and one there, even a spiritual aspirant from time to time. But it profiteth nothing, because it isn't a reality. It offers nothing but an empty, vain promise of fulfillment, that this world has what we need. And isn't that the nature of the media? You've only got to turn on the television and the radio, whatever, the newspapers, and it's all telling you what you're suffering from, and it has exactly what you need to solve it. And we're all hypnotized by, we believe in, and therefore avail ourselves of these material remedies. When if we could but withdraw the power we give to the effect of belief in evil, we would not then resort to the need for its opposite, human good, and we would find our freedom in being as that which remains forever, unadulterated by the illusion of a material sense of life. Yes, that is a high calling, but it is that toward which we all press forward. That is the goal. And there is no judgment. I've been through a year of dental treatment. I would have loved not to have had to have done any of it. I would have loved to have sat and closed my eyes and ding, there they all were. But there they all weren't. So I had to. And I still am going through the whole thing. Half of this is temporaries. But that's how long things take. And that's why patient endurance attaineth to all things. But more than anything, love says, be patient with yourself. Be patient with me. That tender, loving hand that knows your need, that understands the longings of your heart, and will go before you to prepare a place and make crooked places straight. Just lean not unto thine own understanding, but acknowledge him in all thy ways, taking no thought for your life, and he will direct your paths. It's living by a way of trust. It's accepting the truth, the reality, the fact, the revelation that life is universal principle. In action, in expression, made manifest in and as your being and mine. And even this revelation, the next passage is, my doctrine, this that I speak and share, this revelation of truth that finds expression through me is the truth of us all. I have often said, this isn't from me to you as if I know and you don't. This is a revelation of the truth that is the I in and of us all, speaking of itself, that one self, the self I am, which you are. For my doctrine is not mine, but his that sent me. And what sent me into being, into expression, into life, but life, unconditioned, universal, omnipresent. And we only need to sow the seed of staying where I am. And where am I? In time and space, limited by a physical frame. I as consciousness, universal being, unconditioned mind, where am I? Is there anywhere I am not? And as such, am I not given by grace the power of dominion over all things in the sky, on the earth, and beneath the sea, because I fill all space? Where am I? This I that we are says, am I, the I that you are, the I in you, limited by the illusion of a material sense of life, the belief in separation, duality, two powers? Am I affected? Am I touched by any of it? I know not any, it says. And we are invited now to go and do likewise, and know not any of it as a reality or a power. but as the nothingness of the hypnotism of this world that cannot come nigh thy dwelling place when we are established in the conviction that this life by which we live, called infinite, is lived by a universal principle. So thank you. Let's just have a break for 10 minutes, please, and then I have our next session. Thank you.